right, so I want to explain sort of how I've been processing everyday events in the world, and it sort of goes back to an experience that I had with, and it was basically like an internal dialogue with like voices. And this was during a DMT trip. It was kind of a bit of a revelation, even though that the experience was kind of trying for me in terms of the aftermath of it, of having my patternicity going to overdrive and kind of getting into mania and stuff. But it was a very creative state of mind. It was kind of like the guy from the movie Pi, where he was trying to find patterns in Pi. If you guys watch that movie, you'll kind of get the idea of what it was like for me in myself. But and I've explained all about the pattern recognition and seeing patterns in noise and patternicity and pattern recognition overdrive. So I won't get into that stuff yet, or that stuff in this video, because I've talked about it in the past. You guys can just look at the other videos where I talk about that stuff. I want to basically start this with what the voices were saying, and it was basically I felt like my interpretation of the event was that people that I know in my life were somehow telepathically communicating with me. I thought in the time that they somehow figured out how to contact me through some sort of weird psychic telekinesis power or something, and talk to me like I was talking on a phone. And the voices that were most prominent were the people that I felt most were most important to me, I think, at the time. And how basically what they said is they explained how the flower of life came to be, and I didn't really I knew of the flower of life, but I didn't really know how the mechanisms of how it came to be. Certainly not in this fashion. It was a very novel concept that I didn't really have any sort of grasp of until it was explained to me. So that was a very bizarre experience that I don't really have any explanation for why that happened, but I'm just going to go over it. So they basically told me that source started with a point or a singularity, so that can be described as 0 equals infinity. It could be described as a black hole, like nothing is everythingness, or ego death. Those are just things that I've sort of associated with it. And they said that Source was whole with himself, but then he wanted to experience duality. So Source split into a line, and then that created positive and negative. And positive negative actually represented a sort of mental relationship that I had with a specific thing or person. It doesn't really matter in the details of it. It's not really important. But basically they said that this created a line of duality, and that created a circle. And then they said that in this circle, Source ended up looping it and sort of chasing his tail. And that can be described as, let's say, a computer programming that's looping a subroutine over and over. And then then they said that it had the brilliant idea of spiraling out into a new sort of dimension or a new circle, and that created an infinity, basically. So then this replicated over and over, and it created the flower of life. So they basically said that this pattern repeats itself throughout the universe in pretty fundamental ways, kind of like how the Fibonacci sequence repeats itself. And I felt like this was something that was very profound. I don't really know where it came from, but it was a very interesting concept. And through this, I've been using this guide as a this is to that, as that is to this, to try to explain things in the world. And especially in the world that's happening now, I kind of use it to explain even economic systems and try to make sense of that, to try to see what is the right answer, kind of. I look at it as a duality thing. I think that, like, living in the Tao, or like the duality, the yin yang of male and female, I feel like that sort of trying to find the balance between those things, and sort of comparing it to things, even politics. Like if you were to explain, let's say, individualism would be the masculine or dominance energy, basically, like competition, and then the collectivism or egalitarianism and ego death and equal would be the other side of it, basically yang, or the yin and yang. And I basically would have this structure. If I was looking at, let's say, a pyramid, this would be one instance. So this would be like the source branching out into its duality thing, and you would have maybe just the singularity here. So this could represent individualism and competition, or hierarchy, and capitalism, basically. And this could represent egalitarian and just communism or whatever, all of that stuff. And so this is kind of like a left-right dynamic sort of thing, or a male and female. When I'm looking at this stuff, with this revelation, it also gave me a map to try to figure this stuff out, because it made me always see life as a pyramid structure or hierarchy structure. I realized that for anything to be alive, it needs to arrange itself in a hierarchy. So this would be, capitalism. And then this would be communism, I guess. 0 is equal to infinity. So this one would represent 0 is not equal to infinity, because it's basically creating a distinction between two different things. So you don't really have to take this stuff literally. It's kind of just a symbolic representation that I'm sort of working around in my head. In my revelation, it was funny, because it basically told me that my life was a video game almost, because how it explained this thing was position, which is the singularity, and then direction, which is the duality line, and then it said information available, which was basically it created a crosshair. So you could say, like, position, direction, information available, and that was a crosshair. And then it was basically saying you're in a video game, and the purpose of the game is to climb the dominance hierarchy. So that's kind of terminology that Jordan Peterson has talked about. He talks about dominance hierarchies and stuff. I really like listening to him. And information available, that basically represents, I would say, the saying knowledge is power. So you basically want to act like a black hole and just absorb as much skill and information as you possibly can, because I think that the meaning of life, or sort of what I've been rattling around in my brain, is the meaning of life is basically to exercise your will to power towards the all-seeing eye, which is position, direction, and you do that by the concept of knowledge is power. So just absorb as much information, absorb as much skill as you possibly can, build your body, create habits that are conducive to making you healthy, and making sure that you exercise your willpower, and also having a ability to sort of delay gratification. I think that's a very important thing. That all ties into willpower, and the will to power phrase is obviously a Nietzsche sort of reference. I know that with this philosophy, I know that it kind of ties in with social Darwinism, and I know that in the past that kind of that was used to support certain ideas of eugenics and stuff, and survival of the fittest. But it doesn't. I think that you're supposed to balance the egalitarian part of it, so the ego death part of it, the 0 is equal to infinity part, with this pyramid structure. I feel like nowadays they want to get rid of the whole hierarchy structure, and they just want the black hole, or the divide by 0 error that's right here. And I know in programming, if you divide by 0, you get an error. So that's probably why they say that systems, economic systems such as socialism and communism, they always lead to problems, because it's not respecting the dominance hierarchy. Because apparently, I think the dominance hierarchy is what gives people meaning in their life. Because if they have no direction to strive towards, then they just end up sitting on the couch and doing nothing. And when I look deep inside myself and sort of look into, why I work so hard, why do I try to bodybuild and try to work on art and work on piano and stuff. If I dig deep, really deep in my psyche, it's because I want to get to the all-seeing eye of the hierarchy. I want to transcend to whatever hierarchy I see to the top, and you do that obviously with information available. And I feel like that is the specific reason why I get up in the morning, is because there's a game that I get to play. It's kind of I always resonated with the game BioShock, because it explained an objectivist world that sort of was crumbling, basically, because I guess it was sort of imbalanced with not enough egalitarianism. So, but I actually really liked it, because it was a very a very masculine thing to want to try to reach to the top. And even the last boss, how Jack is sort of going up the ladder towards the all-seeing eye of Frank Fontaine to fight him, and Frank Fontaine kind of represents his shadow, if you want to talk about Carl Jung. I think I really liked the game, because I was able to sort of relate to a lot of things in my life and sort of make sense of things by doing like kind of this is to that, is that is to this real world. And that the Frank Fontaine represents the guy that's at the top of the pyramid, and the guy that you basically have to, the boss you have to beat, kind of. And I guess how, if you were to apply this to the real world, that's kind of how things work, is you basically go to the top until you maybe remove the power structure that's there, and then become the power structure, and then someone else comes and then removes you, and then that kind of creates a evolution type thing where it's constantly evolving, because there's this game that's being playing. So every time it goes through its cycle, there's more evolution, and there's more productivity and more creativity and more things being created. So I'm still kind of working through this philosophy, but it's kind of how I've been seeing the whole the structure of even our economic systems and the hierarchies that exist. And speaking of all the unrest and stuff, I get a little anxious, because I recognize that people want to completely take down the hierarchy structure, but I feel like if it's gone, then I don't really have a reason to get up in the morning, because I like playing the game, basically. So that's kind of been something that I've been rattling around in my brain. I think the main thing is to make sure that you're living in the yin yang system and being able to balance things, and not getting too lopsided and to the left or right or whatever. That's why I try to stay as centrist as possible. I don't really like even identity politics either way on the spectrum, on the right or the left. The people that are all about white skin, and the other people that are all about I'm whatever this. So I'm still trying to figure all this stuff out. But these are the kind of thoughts that I've been going through, and I thought I might share them with you guys, because I feel like it's good to sort of bounce these ideas around and sort of get get more understanding of what's going on in the world and what the best sort of system is, I think. So that was pretty much it. I hope you guys thought that was at least entertaining, if anything else. And yeah, see you in the next video. Peace out.